As always, this podcast contains spoilers, and as frequently, it contains discussion of real-life sexual assault allegations and grooming. So listener discretion is advised. Sorry that this keeps having to be the case.
Hey everybody, and welcome back to the DVD Clutter Podcast, the podcast where one couple declutters their DVD collection one film at a time to see which films make the cut. On this episode, we're talking about the 2004 film Sideways, directed by Alexander Payne, starring Paul Giamatti, Thomas Hayden Church, Sandra Oh, and Virginia Madsen.
Get married on Saturday. Here's my last week of freedom.
We're gonna play some golf, eat some great food, and we're gonna send you off in style.
It's gonna be great. If they want to drink Merlot, we're drinking Merlot.
No, if anybody orders Merlot, I'm leaving. I am not drinking any Merlot!
So Mattie, tell me how Sideways came to be in our DVD collection.
Well, Sideways was a film that came out right at around the time that I was really starting to develop as a cinephile. This was 2004. A lot of great films came out in 2004, and that was the one that I believe I ranked. This was probably my first ever top 10 list. I was watching a lot of Ebert and Roper back then, and Sideways was number one.
Really?
Sideways, it beat out Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind.
Wow.
I can't remember what other films came out that year, but there were a lot of good ones that I remember. I think there was a Kill Bill that year. So for this to beat out a Tarantino at the time, that I think that's saying something for where I was at that point in my life.
And where are you now after rewatching?
Well, so I still think that this is a very good movie. I still think that all of the things that I connected with at the time, I think they're all still there. I think that the fact that I was probably, about 17, I can tell that this is a movie that I would have connected with at 17, and it's not necessarily where I'm at now in my life. I was coming from a background of really connecting with directors like Kevin Smith, and this is kind of like it's two movies in one. On the one hand, you've got this like juvenile sort of sex romp buddy comedy between these two middle-aged men, and on the other hand, you've got this kind of very melancholic, kind of sad film about this guy that just has nothing really going on in his life and makes a connection with someone, and it's kind of sweet, but it's also, the choices that he makes sabotage it. And I think that the film does a really good job of balancing both of those stories in a way that is tonally consistent throughout, and those are tones that don't necessarily go together very naturally. So I think that was kind of an achievement in itself, and I think that it kind of represented to me kind of a more adult version, a more grown-up, mature version of kind of what a romance in movies could look like at the time between Paul Giamatti and Virginia Madsen in particular. And now we learned something today, didn't we?
We learned something. So when I was kind of just Googling the cast and crew and all of the movie, just kind of checking up on everybody, see where they are now, we learned that there were allegations brought against Alexander Payne from actress Rose McGowan, who stated that she was raped at the age of 15 by Payne. And he denies these allegations. He says that it was a consensual relationship and that she was 18 at the time.
Which would have put him in his 30s.
Yes. So no lawsuits, no concrete, evidence either way. It's just kind of a hearsay thing at this point, and it seems to kind of just be stalled at that. But it does put a damper on, I think, how we view this film and his work in general. And it's interesting that you say that you connected with it more at a younger age, because when I watched it originally in my teen years, I really thought this was a super boring movie that I just did not connect with. I'm like, these people are so old. Like, this is so, beyond, they're talking about being divorced. And Now when I watch it, I say, well, you know, I've had friends who have been divorced, or like, you know, I've gotten through, you know, certain things in my life where I can see where these people are at in their life. And I actually feel like I connected with it more this time around. But I also really dislike a lot of the, like you were saying, sex romp humor in the movie. I feel like the first half of the movie and the second half actually feel a little bit disjointed for me. I feel like I'm with it for the first half, but then I really fall off during the second half because just the way the characters behave are just so unlikable. And I just don't really love the dynamic between the two guys in the movie. The whole time I was watching it, I just kept thinking about the movies, The Trip to Italy, The Trip.
I was going to bring that up.
That series, because I think that movie does a very similar thing, but does it so much better. I feel like the guys in this movie are just very performative male gender dynamics between the two of them. You know, they both cannot communicate what they're actually feeling and going through. And I'm just not really a huge fan of the way that the relationship is portrayed, and I don't really feel like either of them experience a lot of growth throughout the movie.
I think that there is growth in the film, but I hear you, and I definitely thought of The Trip, and those series of films, they're doing such a similar thing, but they're so much more thoughtful in terms of not just the relationships of the characters, but also they kind of widen out into a broader world from those films. You know, we spend a lot of time as the two characters are waiting to be fed in these fancy restaurants. It's kind of acknowledging their privilege and also their kind of cluelessness of the world around them. And there's one scene in here where we see like a montage of people cultivating the grapes. And I think it's the only scene in the film where we see a non-white character. Oh, I mean, I guess Sandra Oh, but like everyone is kind of in the same like sort of upper class social strata,
right,
more or less. I mean, Paul Giamatti is obviously, he's in that social circle, but he's not you know, he's not wealthy himself, but he's also got like, you know, this expensive wine habit, which is also his alcoholism, right, as well. And I think like a lot of this stuff, it's very interesting to explore, but I think once you kind of get past the character, you know, that Paul Giamatti kind of archetype of, you know, the self-loathing, neurotic little guy who's self-sabotaging, there's not as much richness for me beyond that. It was interesting to me where he's talking about his novel, and he's like, well, it's sort of fiction and sort of nonfiction. I mean, I did base it on my personal life, and like that was something at the time where I was like, oh, like I would have been like, oh, that's interesting, and like, you know, sort of aspiring to be to be in a creative field. It's like, yeah, I want to tell stories about my life, and now I'm like, you sort of had me for a second. I'm like, oh, you did a lot of research on something, and it's like, no, it's just navel gazing. Yeah. And there's the scene where he takes out the manuscript and gives it to Virginia Madsen, and she gives her this giant box of papers, and then she's like, oh, that's a big box, and he's like, wait a second, pulls out the second box, and it's like he can't even describe what the novel is because he doesn't actually commit to anything. He doesn't have anything to say, because he's too stuck in his own problems, and he that's why he can't really show up for her. He can't really show up in anything but an enabling way to Thomas Hayden Church in the film. And, you know, that's why he got divorced, because he's just very self-centered person. Yeah. And it's so interesting because the Virginia Madsen character, to me, you know, she's going through a similar thing in her life. You know, she's around the same age. She's, you know, has been divorced. And yet, I feel like she just has so much more to say. She has this, like, really beautiful little monologue about what she thinks about wine and why she loves wine. Incredible scene. It's the best scene in the movie, in my opinion. Yeah. You know, and it's just so beautiful. And Paul Giamatti's response in that is just like, yeah, I also like Riesling. Like, do you like Riesling? Because he's afraid to say it. He's afraid to be in the moment. Yeah. And it makes sense for his character, but it's also like, like I watch it now and I'm like at the time I'm like, oh, I'm so happy for them that they found each other, they can connect over wine. And now I watch it and I'm like, oh my gosh, why are you seeking this guy? I get it, it makes sense. Like the character work is there, and I think that the performances are incredible and they're great together. But also I'm just like, girl, you can do better. You can do so much better.
I like how wine continues to evolve. Like, if I opened a bottle of wine today, it would taste different than if I'd opened it on any other day. Because a bottle of wine is actually alive. And it's constantly evolving and gaining complexity. That is until it peaks. Like you're 61. And then it begins its steady, inevitable decline. And it tastes so fucking good.
He's a very frustrating character, and again, I understand where it's coming from, but as the movie goes on and you see this just wasted romantic spark, because he's just in a spiral and he's just getting deeper and deeper into this like self-loathing as the film goes on, where it's like he's calling his ex-wife while he's drunk. He's making a huge scene at a winery. It's like he is just really self-destructing. And so I do find the character to be super frustrating. You were talking about how he's enabling, the Thomas Hayden Church character. And I found that to just be so annoying by the end of the movie, because I'm like, I'm not sure what I'm supposed to take away from this, because in the end of the movie, he just decides, well, whatever, I'm just going to play along with this guy. I'm going to go along with, the story he's going to tell his fiance about what happened on the trip. And that's where I'm kind of questioning the character growth, because I don't really know, we get the shot of him just looking lovingly at his friend while he's, finally marrying this woman. And I'm like, but what did he really go through?
Yeah.
What was the actual growth from that experience?
I think there is a certain amount of, and again, sort of going back to like my own life, telling the story of my life in a non-linear fashion where it evolves, no, it devolves. I think at the time, a lot of my friendships were with, like I grew up in a small town with, if you could even call it a town, it was more like a loose collection of houses in the woods. And, a lot of what we did for fun back then was go out into the woods and get drunk. And that dynamic was a very familiar thing for me at the time. And as I've gotten older, a lot of those friends have let me down and fallen away. And I think that that's where, like, I watch it now and I can recognize that, and I still enjoy watching it, but I'm also like, I no longer feel like this is a representative work of, like, this is a way to get to know me where I am now.
Yeah, and Paul Giamatti's character, Miles, even makes, I believe he's telling Virginia Madsen's character, Maya, that, well, he's not really my friend. I'm just like, we are friends, but it was like he was my roommate in college sort of situation. Yeah, so it's
I am not Jack. He was my freshman college roommate.
And so it's kind of interesting, because it's like, so why are you maintaining this friendship? I feel like when I watch the Trip series, the two characters have their kind of disdain for each other, but there's also something that keeps them coming back to these trips, going on these trips, and kind of like just self-discovery with each other each time they go to a new place.
Which is funny too, because there is no connection there in the Trip movies.
Yeah.
They are there for work, but they're also like, they are just, they're performers and they're trying to outperform each other, and that's sort of the fun of watching those characters perform.
Right. And I think there is something, there, and I think that, like, it does develop its own, they do kind of develop their own friendship through that. I'm not really sure why, Miles is friends with with this guy, you know. I'm not really sure what maintaining the friendship does. I mean, in fact, the friend is like, he also seems like the kind of guy who just wants to people please and like tell people what they want to hear while he goes and does his own thing, because, you know, he doesn't tell Miles that his ex-wife is getting remarried and, oh, by the way, she's coming to the wedding with her new husband. And it's kind of like, you guys, which, I mean, again, also, well, I think
if he told him, then you'd freak out and then you wouldn't come on the trip. Right. And what's important to me is that you come on the trip and do the thing that I want to do. And they're both kind of doing a version of that, where Miles is going on the trip and he's like giving Jack the tour of like, here's all the spots that remind me of my ex-wife.
Yeah, it's so cringy.
And let me info dump to you about wine for 2 hours.
Yeah, and I think their dynamic is, I mean, I think it's realistic, because I think that men often have a hard time like relaying their emotions to each other.
You think it's realistic because I info dump to you all the time about stuff.
But like, I think that what it comes down to is like, I think the movie is well written. I think the characters are well developed. I just don't like them.
Yeah.
You know, I just don't like hanging out with them. I think they're idiots. I think so much of what they do, I'm just cringing at it the whole time. And, you know, by the end of the movie, I've just kind of had it with both of them.
I think as I watch it, I do think they're idiots, and I think they're supposed to be idiots. And I think that the way that they are idiots is something that I've come to appreciate more as I've gotten older, which the movie still works with that for me. And I do find it entertaining, and it's because I can see that. I can see a lot of their flaws in me, not so much the misogynist stuff, but like, you know, the way that Miles talks about wine and he puts on big vocabulary stuff, you know, like I have that within me. And, you know, he judges people. This is a cross that I bear.
Well, it's you know, instead of sort of sharing the knowledge in a way that's interesting and inclusive, a lot of times when he says things, it's like, don't say that because you're going to look, you know, you're going to look dumb. Finally, maybe with the Maya, the Virginia Madsen character, he's actually like, because she knows wine, he's actually connecting with her. Because she knows
more about wine than he does.
Yeah. And it's, you know, they're connecting on that. And I think that she sort of opens him up to the idea of, you know, he's saving that one special bottle of wine, and she's like, just drink it because it's at its peak, and from here it's all downhill. And it's kind of a metaphor for like,
is it a metaphor? Is it really a metaphor?
It's a metaphor for, you go and do the thing now because it's all downhill from here, buddy. Like you're peaking now in your life.
Pinot Noir is so difficult to cultivate, and that's why he loves it, because it's such a fussy, troublesome grape that does not thrive everywhere, that it needs a lot of care like he does. Is that a metaphor?
Yeah.
It's a hard grape to grow. Thin-skinned, temperamental, ripens early. It's, you know, it's not a survivor like Cabernet.
At the time, I'm like, oh, that's so profound. That's so clever. And now I'm like, that is just banging that nail with the hammer over and over again. We get it.
Yeah. And I think it's very hard, I think maybe for some audiences, to relate to this movie because, as you brought up, it is very white. It's very kind of upper class-ish, upper middle class at least. And I think sometimes the wine culture can feel a bit inaccessible to people who are not in it because of people like the Paul Giamatti character.
Yeah.
I also kind of wish that they used the landscapes a bit more and the setting a bit more. I don't really think that we got a real good picture of, you know, the vineyards and like where they're at. And again, I'm going to compare it to the trip movies where I can just get a sense of these places from the food that they're eating.
The history, the landscapes, the way that the locals sort of look at the tourists coming in, and, you know, like all of that is such a strong element in the trip films.
Yeah.
And here, like, I was doing research on the area that it takes place in the Central Coast wineries, and it's pretty interesting. Like, one of the towns that they visit is like this sort of like almost like a Danish kind of like enclave of like architecture, where like you walk in and it's like, oh, suddenly you're in Denmark.
Well, and I was wondering that because they're at the Windmill Inn and there's a lot of different, some of the restaurants seem very, kind of specific to certain area or a certain area or something. And we don't get any of that.
That was completely lost on me, until this viewing, because I went in having just read about it.
Yeah, and I think it's totally okay to focus on the characters, but also I feel like the trip part of it is such a huge part of the movie, the wine, where we are, tell us a little bit more about it. Show us, we want to see these places. And, I don't think that it uses that setting to the full potential.
Yeah, and as much as like Paul Giamatti is like, he talks a lot about, what it means to sort of cultivate the wine, what the processes is and how it, how it develops the taste and the consistency and all that stuff that I completely am not very well informed about. But there's not such a sense of place, but I think to a certain extent it might be that the characters are not actually that interested in it. They're in, like, Giamatti is interested in showing off his wine knowledge more than he is, like, he has the appreciation when he drinks it, but he doesn't necessarily have the same sort of appreciation for everything that's around him.
Yeah, and
that's also kind of a contrast with Virginia Madsen, who, when she drinks the wine, she's thinking about, like, oh, who are the people that made it? How many of them are still alive? Mm-hmm. What was the weather like? What was the process like? And he's just like, oh, it's so haunting. It's the best. And, like, actually has very little to say about, like, why the wines connect with him or not. Yeah.
And I think it's just because he's so self-absorbed. And, I mean, really, so is his friend, because they both want really different things out of this trip, and I think that the place is just, it could have been any place. It just so happens that, Paul Giamatti's like, I want to take you to this place I went with my ex-wife so I can like just be really sad and think about her and think about all the places we went to. So it's I think that that's just kind of part of it too. But yeah, I mean, I think it's a good movie.
Yeah. I think I look at it now and I'm sort of like, with the relationship to the wine and the way that they talk about it, it sounds like Hollywood people talking about movies.
Yeah.
And it's a spot that a lot of Hollywood people probably go on vacation. Mm-hmm. And it's something where I can see the film now and I can see sort of the wheels turning in terms of the people that are making it, and they're like, Oscar voters are going to love all this stuff.
Yeah.
And as much as I kind of appreciate it, seems like it's a film that was made on probably they had good actors and stuff in it, but it didn't seem like a film that had a lot of money behind it when they made it. And it seemed like I can see sort of, where they're trying to make the most of like a short shoot and try to like make something that's beautiful, but there is like a scrappiness to it as well. A lot of it to me, like I appreciate it, but I'm also like everything in the film is just so navel gazing again. It's just so much of like Paul Giamatti is so caught up in his own self-pity, and the film is caught up in this Hollywood scene and sort of how it feels to be in Hollywood and to be a writer, or to be by extension a filmmaker.
Yeah.
And to be working a job that's not your dream. And isn't it terrible that you have to teach 8th graders about literature?
Yeah, I think, and I don't know if this is a generational thing too, but
it is a very boomer movie. It's very much a dad movie. There's a lot of polo shirts in this movie.
Because it feels very much, I mean, look, I get it. Most of the people I know are not doing exactly the thing they want to be doing. But I feel like most of us are also, we're living our life. We're not just like, Paul Giamatti he's so pathetic. The thought process is just, I am stuck in this place and isn't this terrible? And he doesn't really do anything about it. It's like, instead of going out, but instead of like writing the better book, or like, instead of being able to
he did write the better book and it got rejected.
Yeah, but because he doesn't even like believe in the book he's writing, because he can't even explain it to people. You know, he's not talking about it with enthusiasm. It's like he doesn't really have that within himself. He's not a confident person putting something out into the world. And, you know, I think that it's kind of, I think this idea of sort of being past your prime too and all is like it's very sort of generational thing, because, you know, I know a lot of people who restart, you know, things later in life now. Like it's.
Oh yeah, like who?
Yeah. And, you know, I think it's more socially acceptable to do that. I don't know, like maybe 20 years ago it wasn't as socially acceptable, or it's kind of just like you're settled in your one thing and this is how it is. You know, like he settled in his marriage. He thought he was going to be, you know, with this person forever, and then that fell apart. And so therefore his whole life is, you know, falling apart. And I don't really like relate to that as much. And kind of overall, I just like, I think it's a well written movie. It's a hard movie to review, because on the one hand I think like it's a well written movie, it's really well acted, it's everything about it is good, but I just personally don't really like relate to it. I don't come away from it, you know, feeling a strong connection to it.
And I get the sense that there is an element of it where the people making it felt like it was a universal experience in some way. And I think that's where it does not quite hold up. Again, I still like you, I appreciate the film. I think it does such a good job at so much of the stuff that it does. And it's just not where I'm at right now, and it's not where, you know, I think that a lot of the things that like I thought were going to be like signals of adulthood ended up not being, you know, and a lot of the things that I thought were in my future weren't there, and thank fucking goodness.
Yeah. I'm kind of at the same place with it. You know, I don't feel a strong need to keep it in the collection. You know, just to kind of get to our end result here. I'm definitely okay with passing it on. I mean, I have now seen it twice in 20 years, and I think that's, you know, I don't need to see any more than that. I got Sideways. It's okay.
I'll probably watch it again at some point, but I don't think it needs to stay in the collection.
Yeah, I don't think it's one that needs to hang out here.
I expected that I was going to come into this and just rave about the film, and then, you know, kind of pull a Saving Private Ryan and say how good the film is, and then come away and, you know, say like, yeah, it's a good film, and I don't want to keep it.
Yeah.
And I think that ultimately it didn't age even as well as I expected it to. You know, a lot of the scenes that I remember the most, that they still play really well. The scene of the phone call in the, you know, in the middle of the date where he calls his ex-wife on the payphone. Incredibly shot, you know, just the way that it communicates sort of like the experience of being drunk and being detached from your surroundings in that way, and dealing with all of this other shit that's going on in your head. Well done. I appreciate it. And Paul Giamatti, like, really at the height of his, you know, at the height of his career at that time. So much that I love about the film. But I'll tell you, like, after like learning what we learned about Alexander Payne and Rose McGowan, I have a tough time watching it now.
Yeah.
And I have a tough time, like, it's a Woody Allen thing now, where it's like I look at all of his films and I'm like, wow, it's all right there.
She's a kid, for God's sake. As if she would even be attracted to guys like us in the first place.
Speak for yourself, man. I get chicks looking at me all the time, all ages. Dudes, too.
Yeah, and it's so going into this, we didn't know that until maybe like 3/4 of the way through the movie, when I was just kind of like looking up stuff and I brought it up, and it's like the air got sucked out of the room.
we stopped laughing at all the jokes.
Yeah, nothing was funny anymore. And, you know, I think that, I mean, again, and we've talked about this with Hitchcock, you know, we've talked about this with other directors, and, you know, I really find it hard, especially in movies that have a lot of, like, sexual humor and stuff, to, you know, like a Woody Allen movie. I have a really hard time going back and watching those movies and being able to like appreciate them, because I'm like, I don't know, like how much is, you know, it's it's very hard to do that when you know this stuff. And I know these are allegations, but you know,
his defense itself sounds like an admission of guilt to me. And again, like you said, allegations.
Right.
Don't sue us. We don't have attorneys.
Right. Allegedly,
yes.
but you know, it is something that you are, you know, you do bring into the context of watching the movie. So for me, that's another reason why I don't really even have like a strong. I remember watching The Descendants. I remember going.
That
to
was
movies
an early date between us.
Yeah, that was an early date movie.
And I think we liked it.
Yeah, I believe we liked it. You know, I never went back and watched it again or anything, so I'm not super familiar with like his other work.
I think we watched Nebraska together.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that was one. Yeah. So,
I definitely like Nebraska.
Yeah, good movies, like all good movies, but you know, certainly marred by this, you know, allegation.
I don't think I'll ever be watching Election again, knowing what I now know.
No. So yeah, I think, you know, what I'm taking away from this was 2 very good glasses of wine that we had while watching it, which I'm really into this. I think we should do this immersive movie watching experience when we watch movies.
A Patrick H. Willems thing where we pair the wine with the movie and then
it was really fun to drink wine and watch the movie. I would highly suggest you get a good bottle of wine if you're going to watch it.
Good bottle of wine, some boxed mac and cheese.
That's what we had tonight, and you know, that was good. So yeah, I guess Sideways will be making its way to the Little Free Library near you.
Sideways has been knocked sideways by this.
And a follow up for anyone who listened to the Terrifier episode, I did indeed put it in a Little Free Library on Saturday, and it was gone by today, which is Monday. So someone is enjoying Terrifier right now. I'm so happy that someone took it.
I'm very thrilled for the 8-year-old who probably.
I don't think so.
No.
Listen, the Little Free Library is open to all. You know, it's, you know, that's how you discover the good stuff. But I hope that it's not an 8-year-old watching it. I hope they're at least like, I don't know, 15, 16.
Yeah. Look, we've all seen movies that we were too young for.
That's what the library is for, and also like HBO when we were kids or whatever.
That's why you're in high school, you go to the movies, you buy a ticket for a movie you have no plans to see, and then you go into the other theater.
That's why I still have a ticket to Matchstick Men, which I never saw because I don't remember what movie I went to go see.
I think you would like Matchstick Men.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, I have a ticket, but I never actually saw the movie. I went to see something else, which I don't even recall what it was that I saw. But
some good Nicolas Cage in that movie.
But, you know.
A top-tier Cage moment that I can think of.
Yeah, I didn't know he was in that, but maybe I'll have to check it out.
You could tell how much we love Sideways watching it tonight.
I'm like, and we are really digressing now. So to bring this back around, on our next episode, we're going to be watching. What movie did you choose, Mattie?
So we're running a little bit late in our podcast publishing schedule, but I wanted to get another Pride Month movie in, and what better movie than the Screen Queen himself? I actually don't know the actor's name off the top of my head, but it is for Pride Month. We will be watching Nightmare on Elm Street 2: Freddy's Revenge. Yeah. Which is a movie that I'm very eager to revisit.
I'm so excited. I'm so excited to watch it. I'm so excited to talk about Freddy, one of my favorite characters, one of my favorite series, and I'm so excited that we're going to be talking about the second movie, which is loved by many, maligned by some, but we will make a verdict on that on the next episode of DVD Clutter.
I spent 3 years trying to extricate myself from a relationship that was full of deception.
I am not Jack.
It's not